They came armed with fake authority and legal buzzwords, hoping to scare him into compliance. What they didn't realize was that Ezekiel Rowe had spent years operating deep behind enemy lines. Intimidation wasn't new to him, and it sure didn't work. It was a little after 9 when the truck rolled in, a battered silver Dodge Ram, streaked with dried mud along the wheel wells. One of the license plate bolts was missing, leaving it to dangle slightly. There were 3 men inside. They weren't delivery drivers, and they sure didn't look like neighbors. Ezekiel was already up, tending to his horses near the eastern fence of his 12-acre property just outside Winslow, Arizona. He saw the truck before he heard it, habit born from years of training. Quiet roads didn't mean safe roads. You always watch the approach. The men climbed out. All 3 wore matching navy polos with a white stitched emblem over the chest, Neighborhood Compliance Authority. Not a real agency. Not recognized by any government. But it was the kind of name designed to fool someone who didn't know better. One man held a clipboard. Another wore a utility belt, though the only things on it were a flashlight and a 2-way radio. The third, taller and darker-skinned, stood back with his arms folded and sunglasses on, trying a little too hard to radiate command. They marched toward the front gate like they had every right to be there. "Mr. Rowe," the clipboard holder called out, his voice formal and stiff. "We're with the HOA Enforcement Division. We need to discuss several code violations on your property." Zeke didn't answer right away. He continued strapping down a hay bale, one knee on the wooden trailer bed, his hands calm and steady. Beside him, his shepherd mix, Taro, sat alert, ears perked, tail motionless. It wasn't about being rude. Zeke had learned long ago that silence, used at the right moment, often did more than words ever could. The man with the clipboard cleared his throat and raised his voice. "Sir, we're going to need you to step over here. You've got unapproved fencing along the southern boundary and structures that weren't authorized by the neighborhood association." Finally, Zeke lifted his head. His voice was low, calm, an edge of steel wrapped in velvet. "There's no HOA out here." The man blinked, thrown off. "Sir, I believe you're mistaken. This area falls under the Mesquite Valley Residential Committee. Section C of the Community Code Enforcement Act. This land," Zeke cut in, "is county property. My deed says unincorporated. No HOA. No enforcement office. No committee." He stepped toward the fence, not in a rush, not aggressive, just steady, controlled. The man with sunglasses shifted his weight and placed a hand near his belt like he was ready to act. But he wasn't ready. None of them were. Zeke stopped just 5 feet from the gate. "You got any kind of ID? Badge number? Something that links you to an actual authority?" The man with the sunglasses replied, his voice deeper, but not quite steady. "We're authorized to conduct inspections of non-compliant properties under community charter guidelines." "This isn't personal." Zeke gave a smile, cold, measured. "You don't even know what law you're quoting." The clipboard man looked down, fumbling through his pages. Something about mandatory inspection procedures slipped from his lips. Zeke didn't flinch. He stood still, watching them, not just with his eyes, but with every fiber of his body, honed to read threats before they moved. From behind him, an older woman approached the fence from her yard. Mrs. Hathaway, a longtime neighbor, phone in hand, recording. "You okay, Zeke?" she called out. Without taking his eyes off the man, he gave her a slight nod. "All good, Martha. Just some unexpected guests." That changed everything. The clipboard man glanced at her, then back to Zeke. Sunglasses guy shifted again, this time stepping back a few inches. They hadn't come expecting witnesses. Zeke didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to threaten. He didn't even need to move. He had already won. He didn't need to raise his voice. Just spoke low and even. "You might want to think long and hard about where you're standing and who you're trying to bluff. This ain't a city street." The wind kicked up a little, and for a moment the only sound was the soft clink of the chain hanging loose on the front gate. The man in sunglasses tried again, clinging to a crumbling sense of authority. "We'll be filing a non-compliance report." "This isn't finished." Zeke leaned in slightly, voice even quieter. "It is, if you walk away now. I'd take that deal." One of them, the youngest, twitched like he had something to say, but he didn't. He looked down instead. This wasn't the kind of pushback they were used to. There was something about Zeke, how he stood, how he spoke, that made them pause. He didn't need to explain himself. He didn't need to win the argument. But behind his steady calm was calculation. Not anger, just clarity. He'd left the Navy 5 years back. 22 years of service. 2 marriages. A torn-up knee that still locked on cold mornings. Bought this land from an old professor who was heading east to be closer to his grandkids. Paid in full. No loans. Just cash and principal. The ranch was simple. One-story house he built himself, mostly from salvage wood. A greenhouse. A couple of goats, 2 horses. It kept his hands busy and his head quiet. The kind of place people chose when they didn't want to be found or bothered. Gas station was 12 miles off. Nearest sheriff's substation, closer to 40. That's probably why these 3 thought they could get away with something. Remote meant vulnerable. At least, that's what they were counting on. Zeke watched the clipboard guy flip a page, pointing to some line like it meant something. No seal. No names. No codes. Just empty forms dressed up to look official. You know, Zeke said casually, there was a crew tried something similar up near Tuba City last fall. Claimed they were from tribal infrastructure. Tried finding folks over solar panels not being up to code. That struck a nerve. The youngest one blinked, eyes darting toward the clipboard, then back to Zeke. What happened to them? He asked before the others could stop him. Zeke tilted his head. One of the homeowners was retired law enforcement. Made some calls. Turned out those inspectors had records going back years. One had open warrants in 3 counties. The clipboard man shot a look at Sunglasses Guy, annoyed now, like this was no longer going how he'd rehearsed. We don't owe you any answers, the man snapped. You're in violation. If you don't take this seriously, there will be consequences. Zeke stepped forward, slow and steady. He wasn't tense, but his presence had weight now. Even Taro took a half step up beside him, ears stiff. Consequences? Zeke repeated. Like what? Fines. Escalation. Property seizure if needed. We've documented the violations. Zeke raised an eyebrow. Who's your supervisor? No one spoke. Got a name? A phone number? A website? Still nothing. You came out here thinking you could scare someone. But you didn't do your research, Zeke said. I'm not some hermit with past due taxes. I've read the zoning board minutes. I've been to the meetings. I've got the 2018 land use plan sitting inside. He let the silence settle. You really thought a polo shirt and some legal-sounding nonsense would be enough to shake me down? The youngest guy looked uneasy now. Sunglasses man puffed up again, trying to take back control. We don't have to answer you. No, Zeke said. But the sheriff might be interested. He pulled his phone from his back pocket and raised it just high enough for them to see. Already dialing. Wait, the clipboard guy said, panicked. Let's talk this out. No need to involve anyone else. Zeke didn't lower the phone. Just stared, steady and sharp. You boys ain't from around here, are you? The youngest one shook his head before realizing and stopping himself. You figured no one out here would stand up to you. Long drive. Nearest help an hour off. But that's where you miscalculated. Out here, folks look out for each other. That lady still recording? Lived down the road since '78. Guy across the ridge? Retired Marine sniper. He let that hang. You picked the wrong place. Before they could turn and leave, Zeke noticed something change in the youngest one's expression, a crack in the act. Doubt. Guilt. Clipboard guy's fingers twitched, like he wanted to vanish. The kid, barely more than that, was looking anywhere but at Zeke. But the one with sunglasses dug in harder. You think this is over because of a phone and a dog, he said, stepping forward. We know what we're doing. You're not the only stop we've made. Zeke's face didn't move. He blinked, slowly. The kind of blink that said, you just crossed a line you don't even understand. You bragging? Zeke asked. Or confessing? Silence again. Stretched out longer this time. Even Taro didn't twitch. Watching. Waiting. From the corner of the ranch, Mrs. Hathaway's phone was still recording. A new face had appeared, Benny, from the other side of the ridge. He wasn't filming. Just standing by his tractor, arms crossed, watching. Where's your vehicle paperwork? Zeke asked suddenly. That truck registered to the city? County? You got fleet plates? Clipboard guy froze mid-step. If you're with a municipal office, that vehicle's in the system. Public record. Want me to run the plate? That broke the kid. We shouldn't be here, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Sunglasses guy whipped around. Shut up, Trey. But it was too late. Zeke caught the name. Trey, huh? Zeke repeated, like it didn't matter, but it did. You didn't give me a badge number, Trey. Where are you based? The kid opened his mouth but said nothing. Clipboard guy jumped in. You're making this harder than it needs to be. We could have just issued the citation and left. You don't issue citations, Zeke said flatly. You're impersonating an agency. That's a felony. That word hit hard. Sunglasses guy backed up a step. Clipboard man lowered the folder like it was suddenly too heavy to hold. Trey looked sick. You want to tell me what this really is? Zeke asked. Or you want to wait for the sheriff to get it out of you? Trey looked from one man to the other, then to the ground. I didn't think it'd be like this, he said, voice barely audible. He said we were just warning folks, knocking on doors, making sure everyone was following code. You ever work with real enforcement? Zeke asked, pressing. Trey shook his head. Ever seen a cease and desist order? No. You thought a fake badge and a clipboard would be enough to scare people into paying? Giving you access? Sunglasses guy stepped in again. Don't talk to him. He doesn't speak for us. Zeke gave a slow, grim smile. Not from humor, just certainty. It was done. You already lost control of this, he said. You just haven't realized it yet. The clipboard man turned, trying to walk back to the truck like nothing was wrong. But Zeke saw the way his legs shook. Taro barked, once, loud, sharp, and the man froze mid-step. Don't run, Zeke said quietly. Trust me. More phones were up now. A third neighbor, someone Zeke didn't even know, had parked on the shoulder, filming from inside their pickup. Let me guess, Zeke continued. You show up at remote homes, say you're with the HOA. Flash a form. Talk fast. Hope folks get scared and let you in. Maybe they hand over some cash. Maybe they don't. Maybe you come back later, when no one's home, and help yourselves. Trey looked like he might bolt, but his legs weren't moving. You thought folks out here were passive, quiet types who wouldn't push back, Zeke said, stepping up to the gate and placing both hands firmly on top. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to put a stop to this. But just when the tension felt like it couldn't get any thicker, the man with the clipboard leaned into the truck. Zeke's voice dropped into something colder than before, still calm, but sharp enough to cut steel. Don't, Zeke warned, locking his gaze on the man's arm as it vanished into the cab. Step away from the truck. Now. The man froze, half in and half out, his body caught in that awkward limbo of indecision, pretending he was just grabbing a pin, but his posture told the truth. Taro, the dog, growled low and steady. Hands where I can see them, Zeke said, stepping beyond the gate, calm but no longer passive. The clipboard guy slowly retracted his hand, empty. But his face betrayed everything. That wasn't a man reaching for paperwork. That was a man unraveling. Let's see some ID, Zeke added. Any of you. Just one official document with your name and a legitimate city seal. Silence. No one moved. Then, a siren began to wail from far off, low, then rising, coming closer. Still, Zeke didn't glance away. His eyes never left the three. You called them. Trey's voice cracked, panic creeping in. I did, Zeke said evenly. 15 minutes ago. Told them I had 3 trespassers posing as officials. Figured you'd still be out here, running your little script. Sunglasses guy cursed and spun toward the truck. But it was too late. Headlights kicked up dust in the distance as a sheriff's cruiser approached. Zeke raised a single hand, not in panic, not in plea, just a simple signal. This is where it's happening. Deputy Lucero stepped out, mid-30s, solid build, all business. He knew Zeke in passing, co-op, feed store, quiet exchanges. Today, though his stance was pure law. Mr. Rowe, Lucero nodded. Everything all right? Zeke gave a brief nod. Thanks for coming. Got 3 men claiming to represent a fake HOA, trying to hand out bogus citations, no ID, no authority. Lucero's eyes flicked to the trio. Names. They've been reluctant, Zeke said. But one goes by Trey. The others? Less cooperative. Lucero stepped closer. Let's see some ID. Clipboard guy forced a smile. Just doing some standard outreach, community info. Great, Lucero replied dryly. Show me the paperwork that gives you the right to do that. Sunglasses guy mumbled something about a miscommunication. Trey said nothing, fear now overtaking whatever confidence he had left. Another cruiser rolled up behind the first. Deputy Sienna Torres stepped out, hand resting lightly on her belt. The whole scene shifted. The illusion of authority the 3 men clung to evaporated. Lucero flipped through the clipboard's contents and frowned. Yeah, this is garbage. No legal letterhead. No agency. Just a bunch of vague language meant to sound threatening. Scary enough to spook the right person, Zeke said. Especially folks who aren't up on the loss. Lucero nodded at Torres. Run the plates. Let's see if this truck's stolen or just dirty. Trey finally cracked. I didn't know, he blurted. He just said we were checking houses. Said it was about safety. Sunglasses guy barked. Shut up, Trey. Too late. Torres returned from the cruiser, expression dark. Truck belongs to a local rental yard. Reported stolen 3 days ago. Lucero exhaled. That'll do it. Torres moved in, handcuffed clipboard guy without a word. Zeke stayed silent, arms folded. He didn't need to gloat. The facts spoke for themselves. Appreciate your patience, Mr. Rowe, Lucero said. We've had similar complaints out in Holbrook and Joseph City. These guys might be part of something wider. Figured as much, Zeke murmured. They were too polished. Lucero motioned to Trey. We'll take their statements here before moving them. That work for you? Zeke gave a small shrug. Long as they stay on that side of the gate. Officers moved in. Calm. Controlled. Trey was already on the ground, head in hands. Clipboard guy looked like he was going to be sick. Sunglasses guy, Dane, was still trying to act like this was all a big misunderstanding. But it wasn't. The lie had collapsed. Then Trey spoke again, and everything got darker. Sitting on the dirt, legs crossed, hands on his thighs, Trey began to talk. I didn't want this, he said softly. He said it'd be easy. Flash a logo, act official. People don't ask questions out here. Lucero knelt down beside him. And who's he? Trey looked up, nodding at the man in sunglasses. Him. Dane. He ran it. Dane said nothing. Just stared, cold, unmoved. Clipboard guy, Lyle, apparently, looked away. Zeke didn't move from the gate. He wasn't there for justice or a show. He was just watching. What was the plan? Lucero asked. Scare people, Trey said. Make them think they owed fines or missed permits. Dane would fix it for a few $100. People paid. Lucero asked. Yeah, Trey whispered. I saw them. We hit 6, maybe 7 homes. Retirees. People near the edge of town. One guy didn't even speak English. Zeke's fist clenched, but he said nothing. The silence around him was heavier than any word. Torres returned with clipboard guy. Name. Lyle Jarvis, he mumbled. Lucero looked back at Zeke. You want to hear the rest? Up to you, Zeke said. But if they've been working this county, you've got more than a headache. Lucero turned to Dane. You Dane? The ringleader. Dane sneered. Prove it. Lucero didn't blink. I will. He nodded to Torres. Put him in the car. We'll sort it at the station. As Torres guided Dane away, Trey looked up at Zeke one last time. I didn't know it could turn into this, he said. He made it sound like a side gig. Wear a shirt. Look the part. Zeke stepped closer, not in anger, but with the kind of gravity that demanded truth. You ever think about what could have happened if you ran into someone who panicked? Zeke asked. Someone with PTSD? A parent alone with kids? A man who felt trapped? Trey swallowed hard. I didn't think that far ahead. That's the problem, Zeke said. No one ever does, until it's too late. Lucero cleared his throat. Trey, we'll need a full statement. Cooperating helps, but you're still accountable. Trey nodded slowly. Torres leaned toward Lucero. Just got word from dispatch. An open case in Snowflake. Fake inspection crew. Homeowner lost $1,500. Lucero muttered a curse. Looks like this runs deeper. Zeke turned and started walking back to his house. His job was done. Mr. Rowe. Lucero called out. Zeke paused, hand on the screen door. Lucero stepped closer, voice low now. There's something you ought to know. This isn't random. These guys. They've been targeting rural properties for months. Mostly folks with military backgrounds. No family nearby. Off the radar. Zeke didn't reply, but his eyes narrowed. They weren't just here to bluff. They were hunting the kind of people who didn't expect help. Violations, Lucero continued. We think they were scouting soft targets, places they could return to. Maybe when no one was home. Zeke let that settle. The meaning was clear. These men weren't just con artists. They were casing homes. Looking for the forgotten. The remote. The kind of folks no one would check on for days. Any signs they've actually broken in? Zeke asked. Not yet, Lucero replied. But we're reviewing footage near Holbrook. A couple was out of town. Came home to missing tools, broken locks. No forced entry. Could be linked. Zeke gave a slow nod. They're clever. In the worst kind of way. Lucero looked out toward the dirt road. Yeah, and they're getting braver. Figured rural meant easy pickings. Zeke turned fully toward him. They figured wrong. Lucero gave a tired grin. This time, yeah. Next time? Might be someone without neighbors. Someone who doesn't read county code over coffee. Zeke didn't smile. You need to put this out there. Let people know. We're working on it. Want to get ahead of it, before someone ends up hurt. Zeke watched as the cruisers loaded the 3 men. Dane still wore that smirk, like none of this would stick. You think the charges will hold? Zeke asked. Lucero shrugged. Impersonating officials. Attempted fraud. Stolen vehicle. Trespassing. Might be enough to keep them in long enough to dig deeper if Trey keeps talking. He's scared, Zeke said. He'll give you what you need. Deputy Torres stepped out of the second cruiser and shut the rear door with a quiet thud. We've got all we need from the scene. Taking them in for booking. Lucero turned back. You ever think about joining up? Even just part-time? Zeke gave him a look. I moved out here to stop wearing a badge. No offense. None taken, Lucero said. Just glad you were the one they picked today. Zeke gave a single nod, then turned toward the house. He unlatched the screen door, stepped inside, and let the wood door close softly behind him. Inside, everything was just as he'd left it, tools neatly stacked by the window, coffee still warm in the pot, his worn flannel jacket slung over the back of a chair. He sat down, took a long breath, and stared out the window. The cruisers rolled off, stirring up dust that drifted and settled behind them. Just like that, they were gone. Taro patted over and rested his head on Zeke's boot. Zeke sat in silence, not thinking about the scam, or the clipboard, or the phony citations, but about the homes without fences, without dogs, without someone who could spot a lie from 30 feet away. He didn't want to be the story, but maybe the story needed telling. An hour later, he sent a message through the county's email list. It was short, plain, and direct. 3 men impersonating HOA officials came to my property today. They presented fake documents and attempted to gain access. Sheriff's department responded and took them into custody. If someone claims authority, ask for ID. Take notes. Don't assume they are who they say they are. Stay alert. He hit send. Then he went back to work in the field. Zeke wasn't trying to be anyone's hero, but some people stand their ground when it matters, and sometimes that's enough to make the wrong people think twice. The message spread quicker than he expected. By morning, neighbors were forwarding it to relatives. By lunch, it showed up in a Facebook group for Northern Arizona off-gridders. By evening, Zeke's phone buzzed with calls from folks he barely knew. You're the guy who stood up to those fake HOA guys, right? He kept the conversations brief, respectful, but distant. He wasn't chasing attention. Still, it found him anyway. A local news channel in Prescott ran a short segment on the arrests. The next day, Lucero held a press conference confirming the suspects were in custody and hinted that a wider investigation was underway. They called it Operation Paper Shield. One woman from Snowflake came forward, said she'd lost $1,500 to a similar scheme. Then a retired couple from Camp Verde. Then a man from Winslow who let the scammers inspect his shed, thinking they were with the fire department. All of them said the same thing. It looked real. The uniforms. The forms. We didn't question it. Most people don't. And that's what made the scam work. Zeke watched the coverage from his living room. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't give interviews. When a journalist from Phoenix emailed him for a quote, he deleted it without reading. He didn't want to be a symbol, but he couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened if they'd shown up at someone else's home. Mrs. Hathaway, maybe. Or someone elderly. Someone alone. That part stuck with him. A week later, Lucero dropped by, wearing jeans, no badge, no radio. Mind if I come in? He asked. Zeke opened the door without a word. They sat at the kitchen table. Just 2 chairs. The same old coffee pot between them. Lucero slid a folder across the table. Inside were stills from a trail cam near a ranch up in Holbrook. Dane and Jarvis were in the photos, walking behind the house in gloves. No forms. No uniforms. Just sneaking. The DA's pressing felony fraud and attempted burglary, Lucero said. Looks like this was about more than intimidation. Could have turned violent. Zeke flipped through the pictures, then shut the folder. Won't stick unless someone talks. Trey's cooperating, Lucero replied. Said he's done faking it. We're working on a deal, if he helps us tie it all together. Zeke nodded. Good. He's just a dumb kid who didn't know when to quit. Lucero hesitated. He told me you were the only one who didn't threaten him. Said he didn't know what to do with that. Zeke looked out the window. Wind tugged at the grass, bending it low. He's got time to figure it out. Lucero stood. Just wanted you to know how far this reached. You didn't just stop a scam, Zeke. You may have stopped something worse. Zeke walked him out. At the porch steps, he asked, You ever wonder how many folks stay quiet, just because it's easier? Lucero turned. All the time. Zeke nodded. That's how people like Dane get bold. Lucero didn't disagree. Back inside, Zeke poured the last of the coffee and sat down again. He wasn't chasing heroics, but he understood this much. When decent people stay silent, the wrong ones get louder. And sometimes, all it takes is one person, calm, steady, asking the right questions to remind everyone that power without truth is nothing. If you've ever felt pressure from someone acting like they're in charge, or if you've seen something that didn't sit right and said nothing, let this be your reminder. You don't have to shout to stand firm. Ask, listen, trust your instincts. And if you ever feel like no one's paying attention, think again.